Welcome into Just a Bit Outside, presented by WaFd Bank. Join a best bank at wafdbank.com. I'm Michelle Ledka, and we've got a great show for you this week, including a one-on-one with Gravity Payments CEO and huge Sounders fan, Dan Price, plus an all-new trivia segment. But let's start things off by checking in with our experts as they weigh in on this week's hot topics from the sidelines. Joining us now here on Just a Bit Outside to give us their hot takes from the sidelines is former Mariners pitcher and current Root Sports analyst, as well as podcast host Ryan Rowland-Smith, Q13's Aaron Levine, and from Brooke and Jeffrey on Moving 92.5, and comedian Jose Bolaños.
Yeah, I made her to say that. Thank
you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited. We're going to jump right in because we've got a ton to talk about on our hot takes on these hot topics. And the first one is one that I feel like has been going around the rumor mill for the last couple of days after pictures surfaced on social media of Seahawks tight end Luke Willson in a rugby jersey, a Seattle Seawolves jersey. He looked the part. Is Luke Willson the newest member of the Seawolves? And if so, is this a good move? Do we like this?
I say yes. I hope so. I think it's a great move. I feel like Luke Willson is our mini like Rob Gronkowski. Like, he's a fun personality. He's a party guy. He's productive on the field. So I feel like he could play anything in Seattle and we would accept him open arms, man.
You know, hey, listen, I grew up with rugby and it's a tough game. So I don't want to sit here and be old school and say, back in my day and give you rugby stories, anything like that. But I will say this, man, when you're going to make that transition, I understand this guy is an NFL player. I understand he's an elite athlete, but there is a massive transition. When you see these Aussie guys coming over to the US and they're as fast as these guys, they might be as big as them, but man, that's a huge transition and it never quite works out. We've seen it, from rugby players trying to make that transition. And I do say NFL players probably have a little bit easier chance to make that transition, but it is a completely different game. I hope he's ready to run a lot because those guys, man, your cardio fitness is going to be through the roof. So get ready to run, Luke. It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough.
Forget Techno Thursdays. I want Techno every day with Luke Willson.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And Jose, you touched on it. I would attend a ping pong match to watch Luke Willson.
I would.
I'm that big of a fan. So I'm hoping this is actually the case. In general, though, I'm actually fascinated by the idea of rugby players not wearing masks and trying to stay COVID-free because of all the sports out there. I mean, this has to be the highest contact, a sport that's played in close quarters during the scrum. I'm really curious if they can actually pull this thing off. And I know they're testing twice a week this season. I think the potential for an outbreak would be so much higher in rugby than any other sport. So I'm rooting for them this year. I'm kind of skeptical that they're all going to make it work. So I'm keeping an eye on that.
Point.
But then on the backside of this, as excited as I am to watch Luke Willson play rugby, because again, let's be real, it'd be fun to watch him play anything. And for the record, I want to say when there was a ping pong bar that opened up here in Seattle, he was there on opening night.
Sure was.
So I'm sure he played ping pong. Yeah. But does this mean his football days are done, or do you think this is going to be kind of like a seasonal thing?
Just the off season. Come on, he's got more left in him. Bobby Wagner goes and interns at local startups in Seattle, and then Luke Willson goes and plays for the Seawolves.
He may actually be in better shape when he comes back if he tries to come back.
There you go.
What a life. I gotta love it. All right. Well, also another story that we've been tracking this week is an unfortunate, just there's so many words and I don't really want to dive too much in it, but everything that's going on over at the Seattle Mariners right now, some really terrible comments made by now their former president and CEO, Kevin Mather. He has now since left the organization and not to dwell, but to move forward. The team is trying to move forward. Spring training games start next week. We've got the regular season starting in April. How do you guys think the players and the actual team, like the people involved in the actual game of baseball, move forward and maybe try and find some positives or a silver lining or something here?
Well, hey, first of all, Michelle, quite the segue. You went from talking about ping pong, Luke Willson character to all of a sudden complete rain on this show. I'm tuned out. I'm down. No, look, it was a tough couple of days. I'm not going to lie.
Something lighthearted, something very serious. It's called balance.
Yeah, there you go. It's called balance. There you go. But hey, look, I'm part of that Mariners family. I know Michelle, you are too. I mean, with Charlie as well, and being around that organization. The tough thing for me, Kevin Mather, I had a few run-ins with him. He'd been there for 25 years. The one thing that is tough, for me is when you all of a sudden put an umbrella over the entire organization from some of these comments. This is not when you walk into that front office, when you sit in that press room and the ownership group or whether it be, a front office member in the baseball ops, they are so invested in this team and this organization and what's happening and so excited for what's going on, with the minor league system or what we have to look forward to. So it's so unfortunate when you see this. We're just about to start games. 2021 is they're over that hump now with that rebuild, with everything that they've set out to do. So it's so tough to hear, one absolute inappropriate session on Zoom, right? And that's like you made a great point. How do you move on from this? How do you move forward? That was something that happened. All of a sudden, now it's in the past. Let's move on. Let's get this baseball ops with the team. Say, hey, look, we're sorry. They apologize. Let's get back on track because there's so much excitement in that front office and what you're going to see on the field. So that's my one take. And again, let's not forget too, man, there are some lifers. There's some people in that front office, even in that ownership group, have been there since, in the dark days, then the good days in 95 and then 2001. And they are so invested in this team. And they're the people who I feel like, represent this organization. And that's what you want to see come to light, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's an awful situation, but you just have to look forward. And I do agree with you, Ryan. I think now it's an umbrella effect. It's just a scenario. If a free agent wants to go to this organization or the Mariners and they're being offered the same amount of money, who are they going to choose? They may choose that other team just because of the press. Doesn't mean the organization's ever been like that, but it is unfortunate to see, that organization suffer because of one person, but they did the right thing. He left. Right. I still consider it a firing, but
absolutely,
he's gone and we all need to move forward. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think they should have fired him before he resigned, but that's just my opinion.
I agree, but I think, the scenario, I believe Ryan, what he said, the 25 years of experience is the only reason why they allowed him to even resign. Cause they say, look, this is one instance out of 25 years. So, we'll let you go your own way. And
I think Marco Gonzalez put it really well this week, that sometimes a common goal can unite you, but sometimes a common enemy can be even greater. And it depends kind of how you interpret that, because maybe the players truly feel that it is them against the world and especially the front office. But Marco is also very able, to your point, Ryan, to kind of come across as authentic when he separated Kevin Mather from the rest of this organization. And I'm not sure how many people are able to compartmentalize like that. I mean, we saw it with Jared Kelnick already, what he said to USA Today. Like, he and his agent truly believe that they're being wronged by this organization on purpose, that he's not going to make the opening day roster, regardless of how good he is this spring because of service time manipulation. But if they can really do that, like Marco talked about, and keep Mather sort of on this island and not hold grudges against anyone else currently with this franchise, then I think it can take them a long way. And it truly says something about the leadership ability of Marco Gonzalez as well.
And Aaron, and you make a great point, man. The Jared Kelnick thing, USA Today and some of the comments he made. Now, first of all, as a player who he's never stepped foot on a major league field just yet. 10 years ago, you would never hear those comments. Now, again, that your agent, have at it. You pay him to make those comments and fight and do everything else. I think the big thing, and I love what Marco says, and he stands up for that leadership and pulling everyone together. I love what he's all about. The most important thing, regardless of what Jared Kelnick has said, how he feels, the emphasis right now in spring training, get in the office with Jerry DiPoto, look him in the eye, have Jerry tell you how he feels. You guys talk about it back and forth. Say what you want publicly, but the big importance right now is if you're Jared Kelnick, let's not forget, you come over, they had a plan for you regardless of what has transpired the last couple of days or regardless of what transpired last year in a COVID season. They had a plan. The minute they traded for you, they said, okay, here's kind of the trajectory. if we do lock him up in a 6-year deal, this is then going to be the trajectory. Well, that didn't happen. Therefore, let's stick with the plan, regardless if it's player development, service time manipulation, which again happens all over baseball. That's just,
it does.
That's a business part. That's the business part of the game. I, as a player, never sat there and said, "Oh, well, I'm better than him. I'm dealing right now. I need to get called back up because he's making $10 million a year. He's sticking around." That's just the way. That's the way it goes. Jared Kelenic understands that too. He's emotional. I love the competitiveness in it. But I think the priority for him right now, walking with Jerry DePato, whoever else he has to, look each other in the eye. This is how I feel about it. That's how you feel about it. Great. Communicate and let's move on.
All very valid points. It'll be interesting to see, I think, to your point about service time and all that, changes that maybe moving forward.
Sure.
We've yet to hear more from like the players union and that kind of stuff. But I think the main takeaway here, to your point, Ryan, how many wonderful people are in the Mariners organization, and they should not get lumped together. The players should not get lumped, all of it, you know, and all of that. But moving on, as we pointed out, I'm very bad at segues. So I'm just going to throw out our next topic and not even try here. And this one, I mean, I'm laughing right now because I'm terrible at segueing, but it breaks my heart. We all saw it over the weekend. Poor Jordan Morris, Mercer Island native, the pride of the Pacific Northwest. I mean, this one just guts me. Injured while on loan with Swansea City. And now coming back to the States for surgery on his leg again, his time overseas done. But we've seen a lot of resilience from him. So I guess your initial thoughts, again, trying to find a silver lining. Can he come back? Do we think he'll make it back? How did the Sounders rebound, you know, now knowing they won't have him at all in 2021?
I think they knew for sure they weren't going to have him at all in 2021. I think he was going to play well for Swansea City and he was going to get transferred or picked up by somebody else. That was my take, at least. To come back from one ACL tear the way he did and in that fashion was truly remarkable. So now to have to do it a second time in a few years, really a daunting task. It kind of reminds me of Will Dissly with the Seahawks, with the knee injury he went through and then the Achilles tear the very next season. It really comes down to having a positive outlook. I know Jordan will have one. He's still only 26 years old and he'll come back from this also. What I'm so frustrated about it was this was really his big opportunity to make a splash on the international stage and to be robbed of that chance so early on in this season. It's a huge bummer because I think we all wanted him to succeed at Swansea City and then to end up with a higher end team in the Premier League. Now we really have no idea whether that's still a possibility down the line.
Yeah, I agree. I still remember Jordan Morris years ago, I don't know, 6, 7 years, whatever the date was, before he signed with the Sounders. Europe was already looking at him. He was a kid out of Stanford, and he was fast, and he had all the potential. And he literally chose to stay in Seattle, the hometown kid. He's like, I'm going to be here. I want to grow. I want to develop. I want to bring that championship to Seattle. And then he did it for us. He brought us to the cup over and over. He got us a championship, a home and an away one. And so this was finally the time all the fans had his back. If he would have went to Europe right away, we all probably would have been, I know I would have pouted. Oh, come on. I don't take the money. You're 19 or 20, whatever. But it was like everything lined up. He got us to the cup. He did all this good stuff. And I think all of us were like, go and flourish, Jordan. Like, be the man you want. And then 5 games in? Oh, it was heartbreaking.
You're right. We love DeAndre Edlin, Seattle guy through and through.
Yeah.
We love Jordan Morris even more. Why? Because he was with the Sounders that much longer and won 2 championships with this team.
Yeah. He made sure that he finished his time. Like, he made his point. There's nothing else he could do. We're not like, you got to stay. We need to get a 4th cup appearance from you. It's like, no, dude, you need to do this for you. And we all supported him and it hurt. But I will say he's a lucky guy because we live in Seattle, one of the biggest tech cities in the world, where Billy Gates lives, his Mercer Island buddy. I think he calls up Bill Gates, buys a couple bionic legs, right? Boom. Now he's going right to the Premier League, right? I mean, he'd be the best player in the world. I think he's a lucky guy if you think about it.
The bionic legs, man. I wish I could have a couple of them too, man. I'll be back to our 98. I'll give me a bionic arm, dude. I'll start pitching again.
Then you'll throw him 908, not the arm, not the arm.
There you go.
All the best to Jordan Morris. Can't wait to see him back out on the pitch, whether it's in Seattle or wherever his amazing career takes him. And quickly, guys, as we wrap things up, I've got to just bring up this last topic, not to make fun of it, not to make light of it or anything, because I think there is a deeper, more important message here. But just because when I saw the headline, it made me go, huh? And that is simply that there are German volleyball players that are refusing to play in Qatar because they're not allowed to wear a bikini, which is what they normally play or wear when they play beach volleyball. However, under further looking into it, they are allowed to wear their team national uniform, which is basically a bikini. So
Yeah.
I just don't I get if they want to make a point and all this, but there's just a lot to digest on this one where I'm kind of like, So I don't know if any of you would like to jump in on this one.
Well, hey, Michelle, I'll kick it off. I mean, I grew up wearing Speedos back in Australia, so I can totally relate.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't know if you remember, Michelle, last time we were on this show, I had the Steve Irwin shorts on. I'm not wearing the Speedo, so don't worry.
Not wearing the Speedo.
Oh,
Yeah,
I missed Ryan Roland Smith in short shorts.
Oh, dude, they're epic. Now, I will say this. It was around Halloween last time I was on here. It wasn't actually, Michelle made it out like it was a Halloween costume. It wasn't. That was just my regular attire hanging out. It was. But, hey, that's all good. But I think, look, when I first read this, I honestly, I looked at it and said, oh, well, they were going to go to Qatar. They weren't allowed to wear it. And all of a sudden they're upset. But then I noticed that they refused to go. And, hey, you know what? Beach volleyball has embraced the bikini. That is the uniform. And there's even rules on the way the bikini's cut as well. Like, it's crazy. And when you think of this, usually like it's usually the other way around. But if that's how you feel about it, beach volleyball is a sport where you want to embrace that international stage. And if this German team feel that strongly about it, hey, have at it. I'm all for it. Good for them.
I actually agree because, it's funny, the headline, but these are professional athletes and they're saying, look, we don't want to be constricted. We're comfortable in our tiny bikinis. And this is what makes me move better. And this is the difference when it comes down to the top athletes in the world. I actually think the more we think about this, all sports should have less, clothing in the sense of the athletes can move. I want to see Seattle Mariners this year. Can you imagine Kyle Seager in a Speedo? Third base. He's going to be so agile. The hot corner will never be hotter. The ratings are going to go through the roof. Michelle's going to watch. I'll tell you.
Hey, Jose, I'll say this. The baseball uniform can cover up a lot, man. There's some bad bodies underneath some baggy uniforms. But they're starting to tighten it up, man. Like Bryce Harper started to go the tight pants and
Yeah.
Hey, good for him, man. If you're athletic and you want to show it off, have at it. I remember for me, I did. Those baseball unis could cover the boiler a little bit, cover the gut. If I was, putting on some pounds in the summer, I loved it because baseball's that sport, man. You can cover up a little bit. It's good.
I like it. That's genius. That's true. I wonder how other players really look. Actually, now I'm going to wonder this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Images that I won't be able to get out of my head for weeks now. Guys, one question about this. Why are they even holding this beach volleyball event in Qatar if there was going to be an issue to begin with? I mean, they have their rules. They have their laws there. I'm siding with the German argument. It's kind of a matter of principle on both sides. But if the country is doing this to bring money and revenue in, then they have to be aware of the protocols and the norms ahead of time. So again, I'm siding with the Germans here.
I agree.
Yeah, you guys, I love it. I'm glad we squeezed that last topic in there.
Squeeze, pun intended.
The responses were better than I could have ever hoped for. This was so much fun. Ryan, Jose, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Next on Just a Bit Outside, we are joined by the co-founder and CEO of Gravity Payments, Dan Price. He made headlines with his Seattle-based credit card processing company about 6 years ago when he cut his $1 million salary so his employees could have a $70,000 minimum salary. He's a huge Sounders fan and loves supporting small businesses, and it was an absolute pleasure catching up with him. Take a listen.
Dan, thanks so much for joining me here on Just a Bit Outside. First of all, it's so wonderful to see you, my friend. It's been far too long.
Really nice to see you, Michelle. It's really a pleasure to join you.
So how have you been? It's been a while since we've seen each other. Obviously, COVID turning the entire world upside down. How are you? How's Gravity? How are your employees? What's kind of the status right now of everything for you?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling incredibly blessed, and even more so, the most profound feeling that I've had over the past year is being humbled because, I, of course, didn't anticipate a pandemic would happen. And we serve 20,000 small businesses, and the pandemic has really been tough on those small businesses. The worst couple weeks in March, they were down collectively 55% of their revenue, which, I was literally like streaming tears, every single day, just looking at these small businesses and talking to the owners and hearing what they were going through. But Gravity also lost 55% of our revenue, and we were losing $1.5 million a month. We had 3 or 4 months before we were going to go under, and I really couldn't come up with a solution for it, but our employees stepped up because they wanted to avoid layoffs or any harm to our businesses that we needed to get reopened, during that most acute time when we were all kind of in the hardest lockdown we've been through. And they came together and volunteered 98% on an individual and anonymous basis, so there'd be no pressure, volunteered to voluntarily decrease their pay during the pandemic to help keep us afloat. And so they really saved the company. But the upshot of the impact for me was it was a very humbling experience. And as much as it's been difficult, I've been able to learn just how much they're really the ones that drive the value of the company, which sounds like maybe wouldn't be always great news for a CEO to hear, but I actually think it's great news as the CEO because that your colleagues are really the ones that are making it happen, takes a little pressure off and allows me to just, try to play my role and fit into the team where I do.
Well, and as a result, if people follow your story at all, they know, the sacrifices you've made to create such a wonderful workplace environment for your colleagues, your employees. And as turn, just saying what you said there, they've wanted to stay, keep the company afloat. And as that has happened, then you're continuing to be able to do your part for our community of helping these small businesses. Have you found, I guess, they say things like the pandemic brings out the best and the worst in people. Here, let's try and focus on the positive. Have you been impressed with how this community has been rallying around small businesses and trying to help each other out during this really trying year?
Absolutely. And I'll share a specific story. There's a gentleman that works at Gravity named Austin Kameen. And one of our favorite little small businesses at Gravity is a business called The Fat Hen. The owners, Cody and Sammy, do such a great job. And if you haven't, you've been there, right? The Fat Hen?
Yeah.
And, it's one of these places that you go there and you just feel special the second you sit down because everything is just done with the utmost of artistry and craftsmanship and just the highest quality and so wonderful. And, secondarily, it's probably the most Instagrammable restaurant of all time because everything just comes out not only beautiful, but just so artistic and creative. And of course, that type of experience doesn't translate very well to at-home dining. And it certainly doesn't translate to dropping it into a bag for Uber or any of the other delivery services and then paying them 15 to 30% of your revenue just to take the food to the customer. So our employee, Austin Kameen, decided on weekends for 6 weekends when they were in the most danger to volunteer to drive food to customers, their most loyal favorite customers, for them to help keep them in business. And, we have other people that we've worked with. There's a local startup here in Seattle called Joe Coffee. And they made kind of like Starbucks type technology for ordering ahead, but for mom and pop coffee shops so that they could stay open during the pandemic. And coffee shops that have used their service have been able to keep their revenue just as high as what it was pre-pandemic. And I could go on and on. We had teams of 5 or 6 people calling all restaurants, getting them set up with online ordering. We had teams of 5 or 6 people calling all these small businesses, making sure that what they had to qualify, what they need to qualify for the PPP loans and all those sorts of things. So it's really been an unprecedented effort to get these businesses open because what we've seen is the larger companies at our all-time highs for sales, profit, their stock price, and the small businesses are really struggling. And so it's just been amazingly gratifying to see all of us coming together to try to support those small businesses, knowing that they're really the ones that make this a really special place to be.
That's so true. And that's such a beautiful thing to hear. And as anyone who's involved in this community or lives in this community, we all see what is so special about the greater Seattle, Pacific Northwest, and what people can do to step up for each other in their times of need. And I want to I've got this, it's kind of a two-parter here for you, Dan. On one side, you're coming up on your 6-year anniversary of when you came out and you cut your salary and you raised the minimum salary for all your employees and made that known. And over the course of that time, if anyone follows you on social media, you have been such an advocate for the causes that you are passionate about. And I so respect that, because I think if someone is passionate about something, it's so great to see them speaking on that. My question for you is, have you always been and had that kind of passion and wanting to speak up and be an advocate for things? You know, if anyone's followed your story, you're from a small town in Idaho, came to Seattle. If that's who you've been, does that coincide with your roots of where you grew up, then coming to Seattle? Or has it been something that's evolved over the last 6 years since you came out and really threw yourself kind of to the lions in doing what you did and making a stand for your company? If that question makes sense. Sorry.
It's a great question. No, it's a great question, Michelle, and it makes total sense to me. I think it's a combination of both, but going back to the very genesis of Gravity Payments, there was a small business owner named Heather Hempel, and she owned a coffee shop in Idaho called Moxie Java, Caldwell, Idaho. I grew up playing rock music, and we would play acoustic shows on Friday night there, and it was a really, cool place to be. And so we would sell out these shows, and we developed this amazing relationship where she was almost like a little bit like the mom of our band as this small business owner for giving us this venue. And it was so inspiring to see the way she made such a big impact, because she provided a really safe space for teenage kids to not get in trouble, but to be able to learn to interact with each other, support each other, and build community. And that really touched me in a deep way, seeing a small business do that in a way that I don't think a big business could, because, they have protocols and they have all these things they have to follow, where she was the owner of the business. And then I saw how she would get bullied by these larger businesses and larger industries. And one of them was the credit card processing industry. So, people know a lot about our $70,000 minimum wage, but some people don't know what we actually do. When a business accepts a credit card, we're the ones that move the money and keep the data secure. And so by being there and providing that service, we just try to protect those small businesses from what we think of as bullying. And so we all got together as a company, and this kind of speaks to the second part of your question. We all got together as a company and we said, hey, who are we? And we spent a lot of time, and we came up with this line, which is basically, we try to stick up for the little guy, and in particular small business owners. But then we realized, well, our employees are actually providing the value, especially the ones on the lower end of the pay scale. They really fit into that too. And then the way I started speaking out was people that I worked with were like, well, if our mission as a company is to stick up for the little guy, and you have this opportunity to speak out in favor of small businesses, in favor of workers and other, people that aren't getting the most fair shake, that goes right in line with the mission of our company. So if anything, it would be kind of a negative against me and a negative against my integrity if I weren't out there using every tool at my disposal. And so that's kind of how it all came together. But as much as I do want to give a lot of credit to my parents, my background, where I came from, I would say the people that I work with every day are my number one inspiration, and they're probably the ones that influence what I say more than anybody else out there.
I absolutely love that, Dan. It's amazing. And if anyone watching or listening to this has not given Dan Price a follow on social media, I highly recommend it. It's so insightful. I enjoy your posts. I feel like I learned so much from following along. Because obviously my background sports, I'll be honest, I don't know that much about business and the economy and all that kind of stuff. And it's been fun to watch. But kind of switching gears here, I want to be honest with our viewers and our listeners here of how you and I got the pleasure of meeting each other. And it's kind of a funny story, Dan. You and I met several years ago, actually at a concert put on by, what was it? It was
Walk the Moon.
Walk the Moon, yes, put on by, I'm totally screwing up the radio station.
It was Gregor and 107.7 The End. And I think you and I were both chatting with Gregor a little bit too. Yeah. Who, by the way, is also a huge Sounders fan.
Yes. And that's how you and I were like, wait a second. I recognize you. No, I recognize you. No, how do I know you? And it's because you're a huge Sounders fan and very good friends with Steve Zakuani. So I'm curious, how did your love of Sounders soccer kind of develop?
Well, when the Sounders started, I kind of I had come across Adrian and the team there a couple times just because he used to be a little bit involved in the technology community, which is more where I was at that time. And so I had always thought that the Sounders were actually like the startup of the year because the Sounders went from, of course, having a substantial presence, but in a lower division to being an incredible situation where they're packing out the stadium and it's so exciting. And so I was like, gotta check this out. And when I went there, I loved seeing everybody, but 3 players in particular basically turned me into a soccer nut. And the 3 players were Steve Zakuani, Freddie Montero, and Osvaldo Alonso. Watching those 3 young players who were all in their early 20s at the time, and you could just see that their level of talent and their passion for what they did, which was totally different. I mean, such opposite 3 players. You couldn't find more different 3 players. But they were so wonderful to watch. And so I just fell in love with the game and I got season tickets. I started going all the time. But then, Steve and I met in passing. But do you know the story of how Steve and I met?
I want to say you told me, but I'm going to ask you to tell it again because it's fantastic. And I remember hearing it the first time being like, that is the coolest story of a beginning of a friendship ever.
So Steve was like, I've got to meet this Dan Price guy. He seems interesting. And, for anybody out there that doesn't know, I know you know, Michelle, Steve is not just a soccer person. Steve can speak intelligently about any topic that's ever existed in the history of the world. And Steve is fine to talk about soccer or anything else. So he was interested in my work around wage equality and the way that we were running the company. He wanted to learn more. And that's just Steve in a nutshell right there. So he decided to go on the main social media platform at that time, which was Facebook, to look me up. And he pressed my name and it said, oh, you're already friends with this person, which confused him. Then he pressed the message Dan button. And there was a message there from me to him. And it was like, hey, Steve, nice meeting you in passing. If you ever want to get together and grab dinner or something, that would be fun. Let me know. And 2.5 years later, Steve said, sure, how about this Wednesday? And we had a beautiful dinner and like a really fun time chatting. And, we've been close friends ever since then.
I love that story so much. And it's so great because it shows like how fun social media can be for meeting like-minded people, things like that and how the world's supposed to work. And I totally cannot agree more with everything you have to say about Steve, all the amazing stuff he does, of course, with the Sounders, with his own nonprofit, his book, and then even his movie. You and I were talking a little offline before we started this recording about how we both watched his new movie, this last year. It's on Amazon. It's called Unbreakable, correct? Is that right? You got it right there. Unbreakable.
Yeah. And Steve is such a nice guy. When he wanted to produce this, he called me and said, hey, do you want to be an executive producer on it with me? And you and me and his brother Sostin, who is also a filmmaker, the 3 of us were the executive producers. So it was all Steve's friends and family that all, put this together. So it was really something that we did that had a lot of heart. Just a story where you feel things so deeply with Steve, with everything that he went through, you know, growing up in the Congo or being born in the Congo, kind of his family having to flee to London and then growing up in a really tough part of London, #1 draft pick for the Sounders, and then to have him break his leg again and for it to take 500 days for him to get back to not only where he had been before, but for a little bit, especially in the playoff run that year, he was actually better, which was, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, it's such an amazing thing. So, you know, we thought, #1, of course, with that story, he could take that story to anybody and people would want to make a movie about it. But the fact that we were able to do it together was so special.
Well, I love that you pointed out heart too, because I mean, I've known Steve for years, covering him with the Sounders, and then I've had the pleasure to be on the Sounders broadcast team with him, you know, for the last several years. And I didn't know even all these parts of his story until it had come out. I tried to go to the premieres. I remember there was a premiere, I want to say, that was in Seattle that we had snow or something a few years ago.
It got snowed out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when COVID came around this year and we started doing our lockdown, you know, I'd seen him put out that it was now on Amazon. I was like, perfect, I'm going to watch it. And I was blown away. It was a beautiful story and beautifully said. And like I said, I'm glad you said heart, because you could feel the heart in it. And it's so fun that soccer has brought you and Steve together, that soccer has brought you and me together. And it's just, I think, a testament to what sports can do in a community.
I totally agree. And I think that, you know, especially the Sounders and especially soccer, there's a grittiness to it that fits Seattle, that fits, you know, the underdog, that fits small businesses. And I think that, you know, we all kind of feel that in different ways. So it's really been something that I can't even put words to how amazing it's been to just be a Sounders fan over these last, you know, 10, 11 years.
You and me both, Dan, and hopefully this year we'll be able to see each other again in the stands, cheering on our team when they get going again in April. Dan, I would love to pick your brain about a million different things and go on and on. So we'll have to do this again. But for everyone out there, check out Unbreakable. Check out Dan Price on social media. Dan, thank you so much for the time, and I hope to see you soon, my friend.
Thank you, Michelle. Great seeing you.
Up next, it's trivia time. Here's Aaron Levine and the latest on the clock.
Well, we're now joined by Mitchell, who was the first to respond to this challenge on Twitter. Where are you from, Mitchell?
I was born in Kent, but I'm a CWU student, so I'm over in Ellensburg right now.
Okay, well, good to you. Good, go Wildcats out there in Ellensburg, the pride of Ellensburg or Kent. You get either one on the line today. So is a $100 gift card to Daniel's Broiler, but you've got to beat me outright to win. These questions are provided by The Fish, Jeff Aaron's Fame Trivia USA, so you can go check them out at Fame Trivia USA on Facebook. Mitchell, each of us is going to have a chance, a minute to answer as many questions as possible. You're going to go first. I'm going to switch headphones out right now, and I'm going to listen to some Boston Augustana. You'll hear it right here. Our Jessamine McIntyre is standing by, so good luck.
Thank you. Let's do it.
You are officially on the clock. So, what U.S. city is the setting for Clint Eastwood's classic Dirty Harry?
Passed.
What was the name of the powdered drink made famous by NASA astronaut John Glenn for drinking in outer space?
Tang.
Developed by local pharmacists, what still popular soft drink had its birthplace in Waco, Texas?
Dr. Pepper.
The president lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Who lives at 10 Downing Street?
The Prime Minister of England.
Found in the United States, what was the tallest landmark in the world up until the Eiffel Tower was built?
The Empire State Building.
What movie made famous the line, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse"?
Pass.
What is the only team in Major League Baseball named after a geological feature?
Minnesota Twins.
Sweet. Let's do this.
Okay. Aaron, are you ready? I'm going to put you on. Here we go. What U.S. city is a setting for Clint Eastwood's classic Dirty Harry?
I don't know. Pass.
What was the name of the powdered drink made famous by NASA astronaut John Glenn drinking in outer space?
Tang.
Developed by a local pharmacist, what still popular soft drink had its birthplace in Waco, Texas?
Dr. Pepper.
The president lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Who lives at 10 Downing Street?
The British Prime Minister.
Found in the United States, what was the tallest landmark up until the Eiffel Tower was built?
Devil's Tower.
What movie made famous the line, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse"?
Godfather.
What is the only team in Major League Baseball named after a geological feature?
Rockies.
Aaron, you are successful. You won 5-3 against Mitchell.
Good game, Mitchell.
Thank you. You too.
Absolutely. Well, just for playing, we've got a Q13 Fox coffee mug for you. We appreciate you joining us. We'll send that out to you in Ellensburg so you can stay up and study late at night, because I know that's what all the college students are doing nowadays, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks a lot for joining us, and hopefully we'll get a rematch soon.
I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Aaron does it again. Well, here are the answers. Dirty Harry was based in San Francisco. Tang was made famous by John Glenn in outer space. Dr. Pepper had its birthplace in Waco, Texas. The British Prime Minister lives at 10 Downing Street. And the Washington Monument was the world's tallest landmark before the Eiffel Tower in 1889. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse is from The Godfather. The Rockies are the only Major League Baseball team named after a geological feature. Now, if you want to take on Aaron and be a part of On the Clock, just head over to Twitter and send him a note at AaronQ13Fox for your chance to join us here on the show. And that does it for this episode of Just a Bit Outside, presented by WaFd Bank. Join the best bank. Remember, you can find all the episodes at justabitoutside.fox and wherever you subscribe to your podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. A huge thanks to Jose, Ryan, Dan, and Mitchell for joining us here on the show. For Aaron Levine and our entire production crew, I'm Michelle Ledka. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.